Welcome to Flat Earth Debate, Uncut and After Show. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Speaking of Patreon, I do a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon, so a massive shout out of thanks and appreciation to Malby Styles, Troy Shuka, Bose Nail, Joseph Pizarro, Samson, Maris, Mobile Mac 777, Neo the One, Lost Cat FE, Rob W, Open Minded, Reese Pound, Del West Watson, Mike, Muted, Dick Earth Skeptic, NA Literalist, Maria Neelands, Unbelievable Productions, Blue Ridge Ranger, Rob H, The Real Gabster, Windrider, Liam Nedrick, Abraham Mohammed, Naibai, Adrian Quintana, Skeptic936, Life is Short, Fireball X, TheFlatEarthChannel.com, Texas Mike, Edwin Johnson, Kirsten Smith, and David Wayne Foster. So another huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. Now I'm going to hand over to whoever is in Google and Discord, so you can enjoy whoever is in there chatting away while I set up for today's live show.
Good morning.
The one where you're going at it with Rumpus, right from the get-go, the one where he goes, because balls.
Like I say, I've done about 20 adverts, so...
What are we talking about?
I was commenting on his trailer that he's got for the next re-up of what was it? I think 58 it is.
Oh, one of Rumpus's moments I caught.
Because balls. What are they doing running around? Are they obeying gravity?
Was that the time where he said they're wandering about?
Yeah. Wandering about. Well, they tend to run around.
They spring into action.
Yeah, there was some great debating points, and then YouTube got hold of it, and because there was a lot of swearing in it, he's taken 90% of the swearing, 10% of the context, and turned it into a rap.
I don't. If I was a normie and I listened to Rumpus, I'd say that you and him are working in unison to make a funny entertainment show, because he comes in almost like a bad cop, good cop thing. It's almost so silly. Well, it is so silly, the position he takes. No one would believe it's true. It's got to be orchestrated. No,
it can't be organic,
dumb.
Right?
Yeah, no one's that dumb. And yet,
talk to David Weiss. He's the boss. He's putting the script together. Good old DITRH.
Sell those apps.
Do you want to hear YouTube's song?
Sure.
Yeah? No?
Yeah.
Does gas go down, go boom, boom?
Absolutely it does, yes.
Why would I need to put it in a vacuum?
Gas tends to wander about.
It's not going down, go boom, boom, fuckwit. You and PhD Thunderfoot Clown are thick as shit. Gas does not go down. You cannot weigh it on a scale. You'd require a container.
You wouldn't need to contain it.
No, this doesn't seem to apply to nature. You think there's a force pulling things down? It doesn't apply to gas.
Well, the thing is, gas molecules run around.
So we must have containment for them to stop them running around then, right?
Yeah, they're running around at 500 meters per second.
So we've got to have containment. You and Thunderfoot are thick as shit. Suck on my balls.
You could be going upwards, but being accelerated downwards.
Shut the fuck up. No, something going up is going down. You should be institutionalized.
You don't understand.
So they're going in all directions, but they're going down.
Moron. You utter moron. Do you understand Imagine you in a car doing...
Oh, Imagination Land. What happened to the scale?
You need to be horse tranquilized and sent to a fucking institution. I wouldn't trust you to open up a fucking gumdrop wrapper. You don't even know what science is.
You fucking moron!
Yeah, get angry with us, you stupid little dick.
We will absolutely shut your stupid dumbass down. You can suffer our fucking nuts on your face. I don't give a fuck what you want. You stupid, pathetic weasel. You pathetic little moron. You deserve nothing. Fuck off, you pathetic masochist. Have some balls. You lying fuck. Just a liar.
You don't even know what science is.
You fucking moron!
Yeah, get angry with us, you stupid little dick.
Gas tends to wander about. You wouldn't need to contain it.
You dick.
Gas tends to wander about. You wouldn't need to contain it.
Shut the fuck up.
Gas tends to wander about. You wouldn't need to contain it.
You're an idiot.
Is there a PG version?
I'm afraid not.
No, that's terrible. Terrible. Just terrible.
Yeah, he could have got a bit more of the context and a bit less of the swearing. Bearing in mind that he's pretty much got every single swear from both me and QE over a 3-hour show. Every single one is in there. You're like, oh god, it just... Someone in the comments was like, oh, it's just Poncho Pete, basically. And you're like, well, yeah, when you edit 3 hours of swearing down to 3 minutes, it does sound pretty blue.
Yeah, I guess for 3 hours it ain't that bad.
Come on, Neil.
For 3 hours?
Oh,
I
is there
worked-
a time
I worked
limit?
with-
Is
I
this
worked
a
with
dilution?
I worked with English and
Just-
Irish people.
Neil's bitten on my excuse.
That's
Let
their
him.
language. I'm sorry, it just is. I work with guys from Tipperary, from Mayo, from Limerick, and it's just like every other word out of their mouth is that word, you know?
You think you're the only one that work with trades?
I'm not saying I am, but I'm just saying no excuse for QE. I'm sorry. QE has no excuse, but I'll give Nathan a pass.
Well, the first part started good, that's for sure.
Hey Nathan, hey lads, how are you?
Hey Brian, saw that funny video you sent me on the goals. That was great.
I posted it in the war room, but I don't know if anyone watched it yesterday.
Yeah, you know, it was really clever of Brian, Nathan. We're talking about angles and sextant and all this, and he sends all these funny moments in female soccer goals, and they just can't get their angles right.
Yeah, well, we were doing a lot of talk about women and men yesterday, and there's certain things women are just not good at, and football is one of those. It's horrendous.
It was funny.
Oh,
They're
God,
pretty
please,
good
God,
within,
save my show.
they're-
Somebody, let's not
No,
list
I'll
things that
say
women
it.
are bad
They're
at.
very good at
Please,
football.
God, please, please.
I'm
Right,
not
there's
gonna
plenty
save
of
it for
women
you.
that play
They're
football
very
for a
good.
start.
They're very good at football.
Right, let's just not do this. I hope that it wouldn't descend into this yesterday. It got close and didn't. Brian comes immediately. Women aren't good at this, that, and the other. Wonderful. Thanks,
Hey,
Brian.
there's just as many funny goals that men do that women do. So it's the same all around.
I don't want that to be anything we discuss ever here. Unless there's in
Okay,
context. If it's to
I'll
do
go
with flat
neutral.
Earth.
I'll go neutral.
If you want, I'll drop and come back in and pretend it's
I don't mind in context, right? When we're talking about the relationship that women in this arena have, that's very much on topic. And yes, in some way, shape or form, there's going to be those opinions leak into that on topic, in context discussion. But just going, You know what? Women can't reverse park. No, just go away. Go away. Shoo.
Well, since you bring in parking,
can I say something on this? Okay, there was this in America. There was this college football team, and they had a girl kicker. First time ever. Kicked off. They made a big fuss about it, and she kicked a little field goal and made a big fuss about it. But shouldn't a person get a job on their ability, not on what they are? As far
Neil,
as male or
Nathan just
female?
said he doesn't want to talk about it.
Yeah, but
God.
they're making a big deal about her as a football player. All right, she kicked the ball and got right off the field. Let me see her run down the field and get leveled by a guy and get up and say, yeah, no problem. That's a different
it, Neil.
story.
You expressed to
Women
my
have a
audience how
certain
you want to
role.
see a woman flattened on a football field. Well done. This is going really well.
Well, they have a certain role. And
No,
men
it was
have a certain
it's
role.
worse.
There's a
It's
lot of
worse
things
than-
I'm not good at.
It's worse than that because the kickoff was to the side, no longer than 40 yards, and they all applauded it.
Yeah,
wrong with the stream
It's the
deck?
worst thing you could do.
What's wrong? I'm pressing the reset button over and over again. Nothing's happening.
because this must be said.
Hey, let's just kick off the show in the right way. Start over.
Right,
Women's
any
never
flat
going to
earth
be
debate?
attacking Nathan show. Sorry, Nathan. Send them over to me.
Don't
I
worry.
entirely blame you.
We can all identify as a woman on the beginning of this show and then change our mind later.
Oh, God. This is never going to end.
Here's a
Right,
memory
even
lapse. I'm
subtly
sorry.
dropping it in with puns, please refrain. I just don't need the
I will
aggravation.
refrain.
If
I
it's
will
on
refrain.
topic, I don't mind. I'll say it a second time, right? If you want to talk about women in flat Earth, more than happy.
All right. Did you see the CGI of that Mars stuff going on? Did anybody see all that crap they were throwing up on the YouTube?
Probably filmed by a woman, right?
No. There's nothing has to do with that. It's of course, it's a violation of the second law of thermodynamics because they're not out there in the vacuum of space doing anything. But it is the most hilarious thing you ever saw. I woke up this morning and there was a YouTube video say actual landing of the Mars rover. You know, this latest one. And when you watch it, it's mixed with CGI as well as their so-called actual landing. And as the thing's touching the so-called surface of the violation of space, a vacuum next to us, all this dust everywhere. You can't even see anything. And then it just reminded me of the Apollo 11 landing where there was no dust and no crater by the 10,000-pound thrust engine that's supposed to have landed on the moon and taken off from it. They can't even get their dust right.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, and it's something I have talked about in the past, but obviously with the lander, none of it appeals to me to even look at. It's like you started off by saying, well, it's a second law of thermodynamics violation, I know. It's like, yeah, I know too. And immediately I just blank out. I just, zone out,
No,
not interested.
I'm with you. I like your argument style on that a lot better, but it's laughable because once you set the precedence that it can't be done, then you just show the witchery or the magic that they try to, and the sheep fall for it.
Exactly.
The best part about it is when ballers come out, and they have done in the past few days. Like, I paid no attention to it. I haven't seen it or anything. I'm like Nathan about it. But for me, the only entertainment there is when ballers come out, as they have done, and make videos about people who are calling it fake and calling them conspiracy nuts and whatever. It's just like, and then they try and explain how it's real.
Hey, I had a guy come on
It's a cartoon.
24/7. I had a guy come on 24/7 and tell me that people have purchased tickets and they are going to the moon. And then what are we going to say when people go to Mars and the moon?
welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live. And there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Also below this video, there is a link to get £50 back for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected. And if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcomed back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. One last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe. Hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now, we are joined by Brian's Logic, 10th Man, Arwin, Neil, and a whole bunch of people in Discord. So welcome one and all.
Good morning.
Good afternoon.
Hello from Discord. Can we get a hello from anybody?
Hello, everyone.
Hello, George. Thank you very much. Much obliged.
Good job, George.
Also, quick shout out to Pugsley Lovejoy. He's just joined as a member. Joined as a hyena. Wow. Good stuff. Thank you very much for joining as a channel member. Although it is actually public chat today, so anyone can chat. You don't have to be a member to chat today. But I really appreciate you joining all the same, Pugsley. Really appreciate it. Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere edge? That would be a horizon, formerly known as Earth curvature.
Nonsense.
Pictures from space.
Get that nipped in the bud. Any evidence that you can have gas pressure without the necessary antecedent of a container for all the fundies who believe that space is a place you can take pictures from, i.e. proof the sky can be a vacuum without us having containment of the gas pressure we actually breathe?
Gravity.
They just went to Mars.
Darwin's on a roll. Sorry, whoever that was.
Containers.
Sorry, 10th. Sorry. Any scientific evidence of gravity?
Math is reality.
Sorry, any science, not math, any scientific evidence of gravity? Arwin.
No.
That was dealt with nicely. Any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics?
Not yet.
They're on the way.
They're on the way. How long have they been in existence as a discipline? On the
It's
way.
hard to know.
These people use the word science quite a lot, though, don't they?
Yeah,
It's a convenient word to use because, you know, when you use science, everyone already believes and trusts that all the testing has been done, the experiments have been done, and it's a valid thing now. That's how far away they've gotten from true science.
Well, in one of your chats, Nathan, somebody told me that moon phases are science.
Well, no, it's a phenomenon like anything they look at in the sky. You know, they've got a claimed cause of that effect that we observe, but that's definitely not an adherence to the scientific method. That's why we ask for valid hypotheses. If they've got one, we'd like it. You know, yeah, they can see lights doing things. That's phenomena. Well, that's step one. Observe natural phenomena. Then establish what you think is the cause. Then vary it to see if it causes it. That's science. Well, we don't even need that. We just need the hypothesis bit. And they haven't got it.
I agree.
Just so stories only.
I agree.
Yeah.
He went back and forth to me. First, he said some people haven't gone to school. And then he goes, because I said, well, it's not science. Moon phases are not science. He goes, you prove my point.
We've been swindled with just so stories claimed to be science, and they're defined accurately as pseudoscience when claimed to be science with no adherence to the scientific method. That's what pseudoscience is. And that's what our former here worldview was based on. Pseudoscience, just so stories claim to be science when there's no adherence to the scientific method, there's no empiricism, they're just stories.
Well, they're not going to get very far if they start off with the pre-assumption that it's a shadow on the moon. They haven't verified it's a shadow. All they can see is a darkening. That's all they can see.
Right, when it comes to eclipses, at least, yes. Another phenomena that they claim to have the cause of. That effect. Based on their models and heliocentrism. That's it. It's just a story based on a philosophy that gives you a cause and effect relationship. Well, cause and effect relationship is validated by science. Experimentation,
But it can't be
right? Go on.
It can't be the shadow, Brian, because in the pictures we've seen before, if they're saying the Earth is causing the shadows on the wrong side of the moon when it is, so that can't be it.
Well, then what causes the moon phases?
Who knows? Who cares?
I don't know, Neil. That's the honest answer.
What is the moon?
We don't know.
No, well, I don't know. Maybe somebody knows. Maybe the people who've lied to us about it being a heliocentric description of what the moon does. Maybe we should go and appeal to them. Please tell us you lied. Please tell us the truth now. And they'll rattle off a new story.
There's no guarantee that people that know they're liars actually know the truth.
Exactly.
Yeah, but see,
they might not know any more than we know.
But then we look bad because the heliocentric model has an answer for moon phases. We don't have anything.
Well, they don't have an answer for, let's just say, well, they have an explanation for different things. But as it always starts with presumptions of a radius. But they don't have an answer for why the moon disappears.
But think of it like an alibi. If you're providing an alibi for where you are, and the prosecutor's saying, well, who did it then? You go, I don't know, I wasn't there. I don't have to provide a story for what actually happened if I'm nothing to do with the story. I can point out how I'm not involved. That's my alibi, and that's all I know. Do I need to come up with a plausible story for how the events I had nothing to do with took place? Well, no. Do I have to come up with, as a flat earther, a plausible story for what the sun is, for example? Any evidence of the distance to the sun? The answer is no. There's a story out there, though, and we can pull that to pieces in front of the people who punt it. No? Distance to the sun? I'll shout out Retro Bill if no one's going to go. Shout out to Retro Bill. Go on, whoever it was.
It's over there.
Epic. Shout out to Retro Bill. It says, good morning, guys. Shout out to 10th Man for his recent presentations. Excellent work. Thank you very much indeed for the Super Chat, Retro Bill. And indeed they are. Check out the Uncut and After Show, where over the last week or so, 10th Man has been doing presentations on the sextant and how it proves the Earth is flat, which it absolutely does. So check them out. They're on my second channel daily. They go out at 9 PM UK time, which is 3 PM Central, something like that.
I agree. 10th Man is ace.
10th Man is ace. Distance to the sun? Anybody at all?
I'm also a joker at times.
Joker? What?
He says, you said I'm ace, and I said I'm also a joker at
Oh,
times.
deck of cards.
Boom, boom! Unfortunately, I'll give this disclaimer. There aren't too many puns in his presentations, if any. Just so you know.
Oh, my God.
Sorry to diminish the presentation.
More's the pity.
Oh, by the way, Nathan, you probably did see the Nathan vs. Rumpus rap, right?
I played it on the pre-show.
Ah, okay.
We just played the Curse Fest.
Nobody liked it.
Yeah, we can bypass it.
Quick shout out to Godzilla37. It says, Globus defending the globe model and children defending Santa. Hard to see a difference. I totally agree. It's the same principle.
The best part of that song was when Rumpus cursed, "Get angry, Rumpus, get angry."
Because balls.
Because balls.
No distance to the sun, Nathan.
Go on, Neil. 10th.
No distance to the sun has been...
What about a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth?
Roche, baby. Roche.
Ferrero Rocher.
Where does this melt exactly?
What doesn't what
they
melt?
They can't even prove the radius of this presupposed Earth, let alone that.
Speaking of radius, any evidence of the R value?
The molten iron core that doesn't exist.
Sounds a bit circular.
Black core?
You caught it.
Black.
I just Googled distance to the sun. It says 91.82 million miles away. So I don't know what you're talking about. The answer is right there in Google.
It's based on an R value that's derived from Venus having the same assumed R value as an Earth assumed to be spherical, and the assumption leading Al-Biruni to measure a dip angle to a claim to be physical tangent point on a sphere we formerly called Earth curvature. It's just the horizon, non-physical. So they don't have a way of deriving the R to impose it on a presupposed spherical Earth and then superimpose that presupposition onto Venus so that they can apply Kepler's third law of interplanetary motion and derive all the scaling values to give them distances. That's where you get your 93 million miles from. 93 or 9? You said 91.2.
That's what it says.
91
Yeah,
then.
it's constantly
Whatever they
changing,
make
you
up.
But is there even a persistent supposed distance to the sun?
Well, it's
I thought
variable,
that
it's scalable.
The Earth was supposed to be wobbling around the sun in an ellipsoid.
Yeah, that's part of the mathematics, but the point is that it's scalable. You can scale it up, you can scale it down, depending on the assumptions that you make. You could push the stars out further and make them bigger. You know, you could just make something that's presumed to be a certain size a bit smaller because it's a bit further away but a bit bigger in the mass, if that makes sense. So you can push the distance out and the size up, depending on how you scale it. Well, you've got to pick a particular value to scale it with in the first instance if you don't know the size of any of the objects you're scaling, and they don't. So they just say, well, Venus is the same size as Earth. It's Earth's twin. Why? Well, because Christian Huygens says it was. That's it.
Yeah, let me read this real quick. The sun is at an average distance of about 93 million miles away. So we're at an average.
I see. Yeah, because of the elliptical orbit, whoever mentioned that earlier, that's why we get 91 million, presumably in there. Let me get this correct. Closer. Well, that would be winter then, wouldn't it, if the sun's closer, right?
No?
Yeah. Really? I think you'll find
Well,
in
they
their
used to
nonsense
say you
backwards
have-
world of heliocentrism, the sun's closer in winter.
Yes, because it has to heat the Earth up because it's colder during winter.
Obviously.
What orbit?
No, but that's not correct. It's like in the summer, in the winter, it's actually further away. Right?
For the Australians, on their model, for us,
It can't
it's
be the same
claimed
for
that the
everybody,
sun
Paul.
it's claimed that the sun is at its closest during winter. For us.
Really?
Yeah. It's nuts, isn't it?
Okay. Whatever. Doesn't make any damn sense anyway.
But it can't
What-
be. It
what
makes
orbit?
no
What
sense
orbit?
because it can't be the same for everybody on a ball.
I mean,
Makes no sense.
you're going to have to expand on that a bit. We all know it doesn't make sense. We're here making a show about flat Earth and how it's not a sphere, but what doesn't make sense specifically? And how doesn't it? What are you talking about?
Well, it could be closer during the winter. What did you say? Further away during the winter in Australia?
Let's forget about Australia. For us, in winter, right, based on the
Right.
tilt and the elliptical motion of Earth around the sun in the heliocentric model, we are at our closest point to the sun, i.e. we are closest to it in winter.
Yeah, and I was told because it's cold and the sun has to work harder, so it's closer.
What? Who told you that? Has to work
That's
harder.
what we were
What?
taught in school. It's closer in winter because it's cold and it's it's got to heat the Earth up. Otherwise, it'd be another ice age. Come on, it makes perfect sense.
What?
It doesn't matter if
No,
it makes
the
sense or
idea
not.
is that the actual distance to the sun has not as much influence as how much direct exposure during the daytime the Earth's surface in that region has of the sun.
Exactly.
But
We're
it's
on a
really weird because I thought that in the elliptical orbit around the supposed sun, the Earth gets closest during spring and fall, which would be simultaneous, both, right? That is when it gets the closest to the sun. Then when it moves away, that's when the summer and winter happen.
in their model. with a
Or is it the other way
66.6
around?
degree tilt off horizontal. So that's what they're claiming the seasons are caused by.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it still has a paradoxical position where you're closest to this huge body at a grass distance. You're closest to it in winter. It just doesn't make any sense. But they've got a different description. They've got us tilted. Anyway, who cares?
No, but it makes,
Just a model.
why it's supposed to make sense is because during the day there's less, the surface is less subjected to the direct sunlight, and that seems to be the primary cause of the heating and the dying down of the heat. It's just the exposure, not so much the supposed distance to the sun.
Right, but you got the right word in there eventually. The cause. So they've got a cause and effect relationship being asserted. All right. Well, that sounds very much within the remit of science, doesn't it? Cause and effect. That is what science is. Dealing with cause and effect. Well, they've got a just so story to describe an effect we experience, in this case, the seasons.
Right. But that was the only part about it that made sense to me.
None of it makes sense. On a ball, flying through space, sun at the centre, it's all nonsense.
Hey, as a baller, there's a lot of things that can make sense. But it didn't make sense to me that, that there is a change of the distance, the literal distance to the sun during the cycle around it. That part just didn't make any sense to me because the sun doesn't change angular size, even apparently. Now, it's always the same size. It doesn't get bigger during certain seasons and smaller. So, anyway, no evidence.
For what? What were we asking? Was that the last housekeeping question?
Distance to the sun, remember?
Distance to the sun. I think that's it. I think that concludes housekeeping.
What about gas pressure out of container?
I did ask. It was the second question because Arwin said pictures from space.
Yes. And then we moved on to gravity.
Exactly. I think we've covered them all. That was it. That concludes housekeeping.
Okay, great.
That was quick.
That was thanks to you, it being quick, because you rattled through the logical progression a baller tends to take when you say, well, any evidence of Earth curve, moving on to, we didn't cover axial rotation. Any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
Lockstep motion and the retaining of angular momentum.
Where's Neil? Where's Brian?
There's an axis.
YouTube wants us to talk about their claimed deviation when travelling north and south, Brian. He's like, cover that more. Like, okay, you're talking about globiolus, fine. Well, I thought to myself when he said it in chat yesterday, when Brian's next on, I'm certain you're more than keen to talk about globiolus all day.
Well, according to them, if you left the equator on an airplane and flew north to 30 degrees north, let's just say, that the Earth will be rotating slower underneath you because you're maintaining the angular momentum. You're conserving the angular momentum of the equator, which is measured by them in miles per hour, which is based on a distance around their mathematical model of an oblate spheroid at the equator, which is 24,900 miles or plus or whatever. So you're traveling supposedly 1,040 miles. You're conserving a momentum speed of 1,000, an angular momentum speed of the linear speed of 1,040 miles per hour. And then because you're moving away from the equator, north or south, you then are moving faster than the rotation of the globe Earth underneath you.
It's okay, I'll leave you a little bit more. So this is very much a description of what's happening in actuality to a projectile, correct?
Yeah, this is what they describe as happening to a projectile. Or anything that's moving north or south away from the equator. Or south to the equator, or north to the equator, or south to the equator. You know, basically that anything moving over the Earth retains the angular momentum of the place it left. So if you leave at the 60 degrees north on an airplane, you're retaining that angular momentum speed at that distance around the Earth in the globe model at that particular point. So when you move south, then the globe will be moving faster than you, and the further south you go, the faster than you will go. So you will be making an actual deviation, or the projectile will be making an actual deviation. It's kind of funny because their claim would mean that we would actually see a deviation of something in the sky as well, but I don't know how they're measuring the conservation of angular momentum in miles per hour. That's a bit, besides everything else, that's a bit of a tongue twister or a mind twister, but they have to do it. They have no choice, because it was pointed out back in the 70s or 80s that we don't see the Coriolis effect. We don't see apparent deviation. So they had to point out, so this was pointed out, so they had to change it. So they changed it to the conservation of angular momentum being measured in linear miles per hour momentum, which is non-existence.
Right. So, and then threw in some confusion by having things like the Met Office describing Coriolis as an actual effect with actual deviation in winds, and convolute the description of what Coriolis effect is when you go through all the descriptions. If you just search it in Google and take the first 10 descriptions, they'll all have contradictions in them. There's like one that I could direct the audience to that accurately describes it, which is Wiki, but there's 5 paragraphs or 6 paragraphs of double-speak contradiction. But on the right-hand side of Wiki, there's an actual GIF with a 2-sentence description of things seeming to curve as you rotate underneath them on a non-inertial reference frame, with a depiction of 2 circles, one showing the view looking down on the circle turning, and that's showing a ball moving straight because you're not turning, so the ball just moves straight, and then another depiction of the roundabout with you attached to it, watching the ball seem to curve because you're turning underneath it, i.e. a very concise description of Coriolis. But if you can throw into the mix totally convoluted, contradictory descriptions throughout every Google search for Coriolis effect, also link a lot of those descriptions to what Earth specifically is claimed to be doing, rather than just detailing how the effect takes place, you can end up with 5 confusing paragraphs in Wiki to throw people off the scent. And it worked. It worked with me when I first looked into it, when I first came to this subject. I just want to read out YouTube's comment, Brian, just because he was the one who actually spurred you into this conversation, because he suggested to me that I cover this today. That's part of why FE isn't going away. No one that believes Earth is a globe is coming up with anything to change anyone's mind. Just stupid stuff like it's a globe or it's not flat. Exactly. That was kind of my sentiment, Ute, to the Rumpus recently. When it's like, well, you don't have anything new. After 4 years, there's nothing you have that's new. There's nothing you have to offer anymore that's interesting. Because we've heard it all before, and none of it's convincing. None of it's changing the story. None of it's overcoming the debunkings. So it's like, well, that's why we're still here. Because nobody's convinced us otherwise. I personally, the rest of the panel, you can all speak to this in a second. Feel free on Discord also. I've given up on that. I've completely relinquished all hope that there's ever going to be anybody showing me it as a sphere. It's demonstrably not. And there's no getting away from that. So it's not like I live in hope that somebody's eventually going to come and show me that it actually is a sphere. I was wrong all along. That's not going to happen. Everything that's going on in terms of the functionality of the ground beneath our feet, they're dealing with it flat because it is. So where do I go? Do I sit in here thinking, oh, one day maybe someone will come and prove the sphere to me? No. But they still come and try, but they just don't have anything any good. So right on, Ute.
Yeah. Well, that's what I say. It's the first thing I say in 24/7 or somewhere else. I say, listen, we all know what you're going to tell us. We've all learned the same thing. Have you got anything new? Are you going to debunk any of the housekeeping questions? It's the same old stuff. But with Coriolis, if we stick to the optical, that it is an optical effect, we won't get caught up in all of that convoluted nonsense.
Well said.
I just said it's something that's important for people to understand, that they changed the Coriolis effect as a term. They gradually changed it to calling it a pseudo force. But then they're doing it more and more often, just calling it the Coriolis force, because in their globeolus, there is an actual deviation. So this actual deviation that is of the projectile or airplane or whatever in their globeolus is like a pseudo force, or maybe they're trying to make it into an actual force. When It was only changed. The word effect was only changed because they couldn't show the effect. They had to claim it as some kind of a pseudo force and now a force. There is no effect, observable effect. You know, so they're gone into talking about a force and never talking about it as an effect because they can't show it. If you understand what I mean.
Yeah. Neil broke it down perfectly. It's like, it's a not actual effect. And Neil described this about 6 months ago, and he's like, I went on a roundabout in my car, looked up at a plane, and from my perspective going around the roundabout, it looked like the plane turned around. Well, yeah, that's it seeming to drift because you're turning underneath it. That's Coriolis effect. Well, the pseudo bit, the not actual bit, the apparent bit, is from Neil's perspective, in his car, looking up at the aeroplane. There's no doubt about it. It's changing direction. Yeah? It's going one way in your windscreen, and then as you go around the roundabout, you have to look out the back rear window to actually see the plane in its direction that you were watching it. So it's literally doing it. It's apparent, meaning you see it happen. But the plane hasn't turned around. You're turning underneath it. It's an apparent effect. Yeah? And it's caused because you're turning underneath it. Well, it's claimed Earth has that effect. You turn underneath stuff, like a plane, just like with Neil's roundabout example, and you look up at it and go, look, it looks like it's curving off course. And then the guy nudges you and go, no. What that actually is Earth turns underneath the plane to cause it to look like it's curving off course. It's just going to be travelling straight. It's us turning underneath the plane. Like Neil turning underneath the plane on a roundabout, making it much more severe. But Earth's supposed to turn underneath stuff. That is Coriolis, an optical effect. In other words, you see it happening. You don't account for it in a projectile, because in this example with the plane and roundabout example, does the guy in the plane get a quick radio call? Ground control, come in. Well, there's a man beneath you turning on a roundabout, and from his perspective, it looks like you're turning around in the air. Please account for this not actual deflection immediately. No. The plane is never going to concern itself with Neil watching it look like it's turning around. But it definitely still looks like it's turning around to Neil when he goes underneath it in a circle. You turning beneath stuff to cause a not actual drift. That's Coriolis. Well, the reason Earth is claimed to have this effect is because it's claimed to turn underneath stuff. The problem, as detailed by Brian, that doesn't happen! You'd notice! So, to get around that little detail that it would happen, should happen, and is claimed to happen on a spinning Earth, Coriolis deviation, things seeming to drift as you turn underneath them. Well, because it doesn't, we get into a wrangle-dangle about what the projectile actually does. How it's curving as it moves north, and having to account for it. Well, that's not Coriolis effect. At all. It's not all to do with the projectile's actual journey. Everything to do with it seeming to move because you turn underneath it. So they convolute it and turn it into an effect that the projectile's actually experiencing, and how much it's experiencing, or how little it would be experiencing it because of a justification for why it wouldn't experience this effect. All nonsense because they're detailing the projectile and its actual journey. Its path is irrelevant when you're detailing Coriolis because the Coriolis effect is a not actual deviation, seeming to drift but not actually.
The reason I highlighted the difference between where it used to be called the Coriolis effect and now they're trying to call it more and more the Coriolis force is because their cause starts with a supposed conservation of angular momentum. So that is a force, let's just say, that's causing the deviation of the projectile or airplane, the actual deviation of the projectile or airplane or whatever in their model and belief. So they had to change it from effect to force. They've had to change it because it's not an effect, because it's a force that's causing it. So they're calling it the Coriolis force, when it's not. It's a visual effect, but we don't observe it.
That's what I'm saying. We should see it everywhere then.
We're not
exactly.
rotating.
We'd notice. Exactly. We'd see it happening. We don't, because it doesn't. So they justify why it doesn't and often include a demonstration or detail a demonstration that has no drift. When it should drift. Doesn't, because it isn't. Earth isn't spinning. Earth is stationary. If it was turning, they'd have Coriolis. They claim they've got Coriolis. We don't experience Coriolis on a turning Earth because we're not turning.
Yeah, but they never learn, because Zanuck the other day was talking about Foucault's pendulum. So it's very frustrating at times, you know?
I love
You
it when
can
they bring
go
up Foucault's
over it, it
pendulum.
makes sense, but they go back to the old stuff.
No, I love it. That's one of my favourite things for them to do. Brilliant. Bring up Foucault's pendulum, because pendulums swing back and forth. That's what pendulums do. Before I go into this discussion about Foucault, I'll read out Retro Bill's super chat. This super chat is in honour of all those innocent bystanders who died from stray gunfire before snipers starting accounting for Coriolis. Yeah, right. A good segue, though, Retro Bill, because snipers is another example that ties them into their actual claim. Precisely. So, likewise, the Foucault pendulum ties them into their actual claim. Pendulums move back and forth. That is what pendulums do. It is inherent to their nature to just move back and forth in one direction. Now, when you look at a Foucault pendulum in a shopping mall, it's got all those dominoes around it in a circle, and it, over time, knocks the dominoes over. Well, obviously, it's swinging round and round then, isn't it? No. It's claimed Earth turns underneath the back and forth motion of the pendulum to cause it to appear to drift. So it's not because pendulums have a figure of 8 motion, as asserted by idiots like Rumpus. They don't. They just move back and forth. And then it is claimed that the deviation you are watching is caused by Earth turning underneath it at 15 degrees an hour. So you are observing a Coriolis effect in the pendulum, as you are claimed to turn beneath it. So it ties them into their claim. This is what you're claiming then. Earth turns under the pendulum to cause it to appear to drift at 15 degrees an hour. So Earth's turning underneath to give us Coriolis deflection at 15 degrees an hour then. Yes, you claim it's the proof of said 15 degrees an hour deviation. Then Earth's turning under aeroplanes at 15 degrees an hour. And they also would drift, seem to curve from the ground, not because they are. Pendulums don't move in a figure of 8, they move back and forth. Planes don't curve, they would just move in a straight path from A to B, but seem to if we were turning underneath them. The problem with that claim is if Earth's turning underneath a pendulum at 15 degrees an hour, and therefore turning underneath an aeroplane, football and sniper's bullet at 15 degrees an hour, it would shorten the flight time. All well and good us looking up at it and going, oh, it looks like it's curving, because Earth's moving underneath it, shortening its flight west. Charlotte, North Carolina to Los Angeles takes, in actuality, 4.5 hours. Now, if Earth was turning, as it is claimed, with a 15 degrees an hour deviation, you'd have an 1.5 hour flight time. Obviously not the case. Shout out to Multi Tom Tom, long time no see. Shout out to Nathan Oakley for sticking with FE all this time. Kudos, my man. There's a lot of longevity in this subject, Multi Tom Tom. Epic subject. And until the entire Western world change their general poisoned worldview that we are on a spinning ball flying through a sky vacuum, I'll still have a show. Good for me! And I really appreciate the support. Thank you very much indeed. There's no Coriolis effect. Earth's not turning underneath anything. If it was, it'd shorten flight times. And drones would whiz away from you at 1,000 miles an hour as they hovered on the equator. Not because they can fly at 1,000 miles an hour, but it's claimed that as it whizzes away from you, your guy next to you says, oh, it's not really flying 1,000 miles an hour, it's Earth turning underneath it. Obviously, that doesn't happen because we don't have any Coriolis effect.
Nathan, if everybody does come to a realization of flat Earth, you'll go from a debate show to a classroom, and you'll be a teacher.
I already see it that way. I already see that this way. This show is marked as education, Neil. That's absolutely how I see the show.
I agree.
Just for the audience who might be new to the subject, because most of the audience out there will know this, but there's new people listening all the time. Just add secondary points, not as important as what Nathan just said about the argument of if things are rotating underneath pendulums. If the Earth side is rotating underneath the pendulum, then it's also rotating underneath an airplane, and it's not rotating underneath an airplane, so it's not rotating underneath pendulums. If the Earth was rotating, no pendulum for a start could stay stationary. It would constantly be moving, because no pendulum will stay stationary on a moving surface, number one. Number two, for anyone who is new to the subject, who wants to further look into this and is further confused, is a bit confused by it, all these places that have these pendulums, they either have electromagnetic motors that cause them to go in particular directions and do particular things, or they have somebody who makes sure that the pendulum keeps going and keeps going in the desired direction. And they will even stop the pendulum when it's going in the non-desired direction and force it to go to the desired direction. It's the biggest joke of a proof that I think the globe has. And it kills them because as soon as they bring it up, we don't even need to talk about all the other nonsense because they're claiming that the Earth is rotating underneath the pendulum. And then if it's rotating, as Nathan says, if it's rotating underneath the pendulum, then it's rotating underneath the airplane, and we'll have shorter flights going east to west. But we don't have that. So it's not rotating underneath the pendulum because it's not rotating at all.
Exactly. And it's a convoluted proof that they can argue all day about what you perceive to be their claim about it, and then discuss what we perceive to be their claim about the pendulum, rather than the overall implication that if Earth's turning under the pendulum to cause a 15 degrees an hour drift and knock over the dominoes, then Earth's turning underneath as a non-inertial spinning reference frame, and we'd experience Coriolis drift, as is asserted to be the case. It's just only asserted to be the case in things like footballs that are in the air for a couple of seconds, or sniper's bullets that you can't even see whiz through the air. Now, it's claimed that Earth turns underneath those things. So, in Neil deGrasse Tyson's example of a football making a goal because Earth turned underneath it to cause it to seem to drift through the goal, well, that's Earth turning underneath the ball to cause that apparent drift. Well, the ball's travelling straight, it just seemed to drift a little bit because you were turning underneath it as it was in the air. The problem with the example Neil deGrasse Tyson makes is how many blimps have got Earth turning underneath them as they film field goals? Well, they're not. Earth's not turning underneath the blimp because it's not turning underneath the football, but it's asserted to turn underneath the football, and it's asserted to turn underneath the sniper's bullet. Well, they have to track the target because once the bullet leaves the barrel, it's going to have Earth turning underneath it, and the target's moving then. So you've got to lead the target so that you'll still hit it as Earth turns under the bullet. Well, that's a Coriolis deflection caused by Earth turning under the bullet according to their claim. That would shorten flight times. That would cause hot air balloons to land in a very different location as Earth turned underneath them. That would cause drones to whiz away at 1,000 miles an hour as they hovered on the equator. None of which happens. Anything that's in the air for a significant period of time does not appear to drift away as you turn underneath it.
Let me play baller here. Neil deGrasse Tyson's an idiot.
Neil deGrasse Tyson is merely asserting the holy priesthood's rhetoric in terms of what should happen. Earth is claimed to have Coriolis effect. Now, at the moment, at trench level, it's reliant on both sides not knowing really what Coriolis is. So that you can argue about what Coriolis is, not how, if Earth has Coriolis, that's non-inertial, spinning reference frame, turning beneath an inertial reference frame with an observation of a projectile seeming to drift because you're turning beneath it. And if Earth is turning beneath stuff, bullets, balls, whatever, then it would shorten flight times and drones would drift away 1,000 miles an hour on the equator. Let's argue all day about how we shouldn't see drones drifting away because we're turning underneath them to cause this non-actual deviation. Obviously, drones can't fly at 1,000 miles an hour. They say, drones have got motors, powered flight, therefore no deviation. It's like, what do you mean? You're supposed to be fighting on the globe side that we have 15 degrees an hour drift as Earth turns underneath. It's called Coriolis. But you're going to spend 25 minutes to 3 hours on some occasions arguing about how we shouldn't see shortened flight times, how we shouldn't see drones drift away as we turn underneath them, Coriolis effect. That's what we get at trench level. So reliant entirely on people not knowing what Coriolis even is, because if they did, they'd understand implicitly that we've got to be turning beneath stuff to have the effect. So Earth's got to be turning beneath stuff to have the effect. And if we're turning beneath stuff, it shortens flight times.
Yeah, when they come in and claim that we shouldn't expect to see any evidence that the Earth is rotating and we shouldn't expect to see any evidence of a physical geometric horizon. And we shouldn't expect to see any evidence of of gas pressure, of a gas pressure gradient forming within a vacuum. You know, all these kind of things. That's purely confirmation bias for them. They're telling themselves that. They're coming in here to audibly tell themselves, right, regardless what argument you put to them, they're telling themselves that there's no way I should have to expect to see this, because we wouldn't see this on the globe model.
Even though they would with Coriolis. So it's a cognitive dissonance thing. We've been saying these two words a lot recently, and there's good reason why. Because if you come into an arena and start your conversation by saying, Earth has 15 degrees an hour drift, so you'll sometimes see the comments, thanks Bob for proving 15 degrees an hour drift. Well, that's a claim that Earth turns underneath to cause not actual drift at 15 degrees an hour, Coriolis effect basically. But that same person will come in, we've had this recently, and they'll say, you drop a ball in a tower and it will land not directly below where you dropped it from, but off slightly. You go, okay, so what you're saying is Earth turns underneath the ball to cause it to not land directly beneath where you dropped it from. In other words, Coriolis effect. It seemed like, if you were watching the ball took a curved path and then didn't land in a straight line below where you dropped it from. It landed somewhere else because it curved away from its straight path. That's Coriolis effect. But that same person will tell you all about how you wouldn't expect to see that very effect in anything other than his very controlled man-made example, with 35 attempts to get it to do this, and then an assertion that Earth caused it to do it because it drifted. It's Earth turning underneath it. You get them to the point where they make their own claim, and then they'll tell you, we wouldn't expect to see drift. Or even ask us to prove why we're saying Earth's turning underneath stuff when we point out that it isn't. That's what we get at trench level. They'll deny the very claim they've came in to prove. Earth turns underneath stuff, Coriolis effect, we have deviation, 15 degrees an hour drift, watch my pendulum drift, watch my ball drift through the goal, watch my bullet need to have the target led. Well, that means you've got Earth turning underneath an aeroplane and it would drift away. Powered flight, powered flight. It's like, no. It's an optical effect you observe from the ground. All we're talking about with Coriolis is you looking at the plane, seeming to drift because you're watching it as you turn underneath it. That's the claim. So to have that effect, as you claim you have it in bullets and balls, you'd have it in planes and helicopters and hot air balloons and drones. We just don't. And what that's the thing that would have the most effect. It's in the air the longest period.
Well, according to Rumpus, it sounds a bit sloppy when you say turn underneath.
Yeah, well, Coriolis effect is a non-inertial spinning reference frame turning beneath an inertial reference frame. But when we say Earth turning beneath an inertial reference frame, in other words, just substitute the description of Coriolis effect with the words non-inertial for Earth, they don't like it because it doesn't happen.
Maybe he should contact Mr. Smoking the Grass Tyson and let him know about that.
They'll just call him an idiot.
Well, go ahead.
He's
on your side.
Floppy.
You go ahead and call him an idiot.
The ball is throw him under the bus. You know that.
Yeah, but the thing about Neil deGrasse Tyson is he can say that the Earth rotates underneath the ball, and he'll get away with that because all he's doing is pumping out that message to people.
Nobody's ever going to challenge him.
Yeah,
I say we put pressure on him. I say we put pressure on him to debate this. Enough of this nonsense.
He's already said he won't.
I don't care.
Neil
Put
and
more
Chocolate, hold on a
him.
second. Just stop rumping
Call the
Brian.
scaredy cat.
Neil and
what I'm trying
Chocolate,
to say.
hello. Just let Brian get to the end of his point. Go ahead, Brian.
Thanks, Nathan. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. It's like he can say that and get away with it because he's never going to come in and debate in this arena. He won't be under pressure to do it. And whoever does have to do it in the future, it won't be him. So he can make that claim all day long, and he doesn't have to back it up because he just knows people will just accept it from him. And it doesn't matter in 10 years down the line when someone else that's an astrophysicist or something has to publicly deal with us because he won't be the one that does it. Because at that stage, he'll be retired, none of his business or whatever, but he won't be doing it.
You would think somebody would call him out, right? Like where are the football coaches on this? All the people that would listen to this and say, hey, wait a minute. If Neil deGrasse could just watch a game and calculate how the Earth rotated underneath the ball so that
Yeah,
he
right.
could score the field goal. How can I? Why is this not in the playbook?
Why isn't it in the bookies? Why haven't the bookies
Hello?
got it in the stats? Why haven't the people who gamble on it got, well, this particular stadium's pointing this direction. So I say
Yes.
it favours them in field goals. Therefore, statistically, Earth turning underneath this stadium's going to give this team a more likely win. Never going to be calculated, never going to be part of the stats, never going to be gambled on, never going to be used to predict who's going to win, because it doesn't happen.
How could we get him out into the arena? There's got to be a way. Maybe if we call him a scaredy cat, scaredy cat, scaredy cat.
Neil deGrasse Tyson's job is to sit in front of a pretty interviewer, make an assertion that's in line with the rhetoric, and have the interviewer fawn over his declaration. Absolutely not his position to come to trench level and say, Earth turned underneath a football for it to cause not actual deflection from the stands and seem to drift through the goal. You go, well, if Earth is turning under a ball, then it's turning under a plane, Mr. Tyson. What's he going to do then? Relinquish his ball belief? Say his calculations are wrong? Say his tweet was incorrect? He's not going to be able to do any of those things. He would have to accept the logical consistency that is, if Earth has Coriolis, Earth has Coriolis, which is all we really argue about here. We've got it in our proof top 3 for why Earth isn't spinning. Coriolis effect. We'd have some. Well, it's also in their list of proofsies, isn't it? Therefore, you can't have Neil deGrasse Tyson coming to us when we use Coriolis to debunk the claim Earth's turning, when he's claiming it's a proofsy with a football.
Yeah, why would he come here when he can stay in Hollywood, be in movies, get all kinds of notoriety, do interviews, hang around with famous people? Why would he come here to have his whole world destroyed? Which what would happen? Because he wouldn't be able to back his claims.
It would only make the general public aware of the trenchers, which is big trouble because trenchers constantly contradict the mainstream narrative. So
our lot in life is not to deal with Neil deGrasse Tyson. Our lot in life is to deal with nameless, faceless trolls who tell us that we don't understand what Neil deGrasse Tyson's actually saying, and then reword what he said into, there won't ever be drift, we wouldn't expect to see it, now you, flat earther, prove reference frames that you're claiming. That's what they need, not Neil deGrasse Tyson. If Neil deGrasse Tyson came here and said, you need to prove that we've got Earth turning underneath stuff, you and your reference frames are ruined, which is the kind of argument we get, demanded that we prove their claim as a burden of proof reversal fallacy when we're debunking it. Imagine Neil deGrasse Tyson saying, how dare you claim Earth turns underneath stuff? And you go, that's Coriolis effect. Would you like me to detail what Coriolis effect is? Here's several citations that show you and detail with visual examples of how it works. And you're claiming that's what the ball did. You're claiming non-inertial turning reference frame under the ball to cause not actual deflection. That is your claim. That's what Coriolis is. Therefore, flights would be reduced in their duration, Mr. Tyson. Where's he going to go?
Well, he's going to have to realize lockstep theory at some point.
What, crapping in the face of his claim that the ball drifted? So he's saying, the ball drifted because we had a not actual deflection caused by Earth's rotation. That's his claim. Well, what, simultaneously, the ball didn't deflect through the goal because Earth and atmosphere move as one in violation of the first law of thermodynamics. You think you can hold both positions and not seem like a complete cretin?
He could abandon
on the screen. We could have his tweet while he's saying that.
Yeah,
he could abandon his old position and just say, "Yeah, I've looked deeper into it, and there's actually an alternative explanation."
No, he can't. He's a priest. He can't deviate from the rhetoric. Now, the people at trench level can easily demonstrate their cognitive dissonance and will, by way of defending their own pain, try and explain their cognitive dissonance, hold both positions simultaneously. But who's doing it? I asked one guy what his name was. He refused to give it me. These people are totally nameless and faceless when they express their cognitive dissonance here. Neil deGrasse Tyson needs to seem united in his absolute certitude of what he is claiming. Not say, well, actually, I might be wrong that the ball drifted through because of Earth's rotation. Well, it could be that Earth's rotation wouldn't be noticeable because nothing's drifting. It's all travelling at the same rate as the air that's moving in violation of the first law. It would piss in the face of his own claim, Arwin. which wouldn't make him seem very believable now, would it? Doesn't matter if Joe Public does that, though.
Okay, you got a point there. It is in a way almost meant to trigger people justifying it. It is
I want to trigger the
design.
I want to trigger the football coaches. Like, hello, why is this not in the playbook that you could just figure out how the Earth's rotation will help you win the game? Why are people winning Super Bowls without this?
Exactly. I want to appeal to the bookies with exactly the same appeal. Why aren't the bookies calculating which direction the stadium's going to benefit whichever team?
Yeah, man. Get on this.
Don't they already do that with the sunlight?
Well, exactly. So something plausible. Well, the sun will get in the players' eyes because they're playing at 3 p.m. and this particular stadium's facing east. So therefore, if they're pointing at that goal, they're going to have the sun in their eyes. And you go, that's something plausible that might throw the game one way or the other. However, literally something turning underneath as the ball moves. Well, we don't need to concern ourselves with that. But Neil deGrasse Tyson will tweet out how it affected the game.
Exactly.
Like, literally, he claimed that the game was only won because of that effect, right? It was so influential, it swayed the game. According to him.
Like the big golf guys, like Tiger Woods, are they getting like hole-in-ones, and from how far away are they getting that? Did they calculate which way the Earth was spinning? I mean, come on, man. That's not
a good point. The golf ball's in the air a lot longer than a sniper's bullet.
Exactly.
If you're in a war and one person, when one army is dealing with the Coriolis and the other army's not, somebody's getting slayed.
Yeah, the one that ignores Coriolis is most likely going to win.
Exactly.
Because it doesn't happen.
It makes no sense, though, because if the Coriolis effect was present due to the Earth spinning underneath and everything would be deviating, then even before the people would accept that the Earth might be a ball spinning underneath, there would be a general in the field knowledge. It's like, oh yeah, when you're facing that direction and you can recognize it by where the sun is at in day, you're going to have to aim slightly to the right every time. We don't know why, but you have to or you're going to miss.
Yeah, right? They'll keep missing and saying, we're not calculating right. We're not calculating right. We're losing men by the thousands.
And then the moment humans put vehicles in the air, it would have been really evident. Okay? We can notice that with a bullet. As soon as people started flying 3,000, 4,000 miles away, I think that would have been evident. And it's not. And that's not our fault. So don't come in here and tell us, why would we expect to see it? Well, that's your side that says we expect to see it. It's not us.
The comments from Discord. Anyone want to comment on this?
I don't understand why not any type of rifle ever designed. Why it doesn't have like a standard in the crosshair systems of guns? Why it doesn't have a special Coriolis indicator, as a standard issue with every single weapon ever?
Because good question. Because it's a not actual effect, Arwin.
Generals and commanders in the battlefield have always had 2 points that they go with. Take the high ground and put the sun in the face of the enemy. That's it. No Coriolis.
Sorry, I covered this earlier, though, Arwin. Yes, you're right, 10th man. But when I said, with the example of Neil under the roundabout, does the plane, likewise with your example or in line with your example, does the plane get a radio command to adjust their course because Neil is underneath them on a roundabout, seeing them seem to turn around? Do they need to worry about that? Obviously not, because it's a not actual deflection, and the actual trajectory of the plane in this example has nothing to do with the effect of Coriolis. So you're never going to have a Coriolis meter on anything.
No, an indicator that helps the person using the aiming device.
Let me try once more.
To remember that there is
I heard. So try once more. So on the plane, in my example, Neil's underneath it, looks up and sees the plane look like it's turning around because he's on a roundabout. Does the plane have a Coriolis indicator that tells the pilot by a little gauge, check it out, somebody's watching you from a non-inertial spinning reference frame, seem to turn around? Does the plane have an indicator for that, Arwin?
Yes, a special red flickering terminal. No, it doesn't. Right.
You don't need indication for not actual
It'll be
deflection.
fun though when that plane tries to land and it's gonna have to negotiate a moving runway. That'll be fun.
Or when it can't keep up with the turn of the Earth on the equator and is actually flying backwards in relation to the location it's travelling to. That would be a problem too. Doesn't happen because Earth's not turning underneath anything.
I just say to Neil, if someone ever tells you Neil deGrasse Tyson's an idiot, just say welcome to Flat Earth, because that's what we say.
Highly skilled magician, I'll have you know. Check out the waistcoat.
Yeah.
I kind of like Neil. I think he's a fun guy, and that's probably his only redeeming quality.
The magician.
Because other than that, he's just spouting bullshit all the time.
Bullshit. So. He's a magician. That's what magic is, you know. Words. It's just that's what he's doing. He's casting spells when he talks about things, and the spell is never going to have the contradictory, cognitive dissonance-laden rhetoric from the trench involved in any way, shape, or form. So Neil deGrasse Tyson's never going to be asserting Earth and atmosphere travel as one, no deviation, because that's not the globe rhetoric. The globe rhetoric is Coriolis effect, and that's what he will punt. He definitely doesn't need challenging it from us because it would leave him looking incredibly stupid. Because here we spend most of the time trying to convince our opponent what they actually claim. You're claiming Earth turns under the pendulum. Often we spend so much time explaining to them what they're actually claiming. They think we're claiming it, and we get people like Simon Dan saying you and your reference frames are ruined, thinking I've got reference frames to claim, because we spend so much time explaining to them what their claim actually involves. Your claim involves Earth turning underneath stuff. And they don't think it does because it doesn't happen. They can't believe that that's the actual claim. Because all they've heard is Coriolis effect, Google searched it and found a load of complicated descriptions that involve Earth, or involve clouds, or involve something else that's nothing to do with not actual deflection observed from a non-inertial turning reference frame. So they can't believe it when you lay it out for them that Earth should be turning underneath stuff to have this effect. So much so that they know instinctively it doesn't happen, and go, no, you prove to me that that's what we're claiming. With that, I'm going to say a huge, massive, enormous thank you to, first and foremost, all of you tuned in live. But if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Also, below this video, there is a link to get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on either premiering stream. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!
Couldn't hear him when I was talking.
Did somebody ask him, but what if you got the distance wrong?
Nah,
Still go then?
I can't remember exactly. I think he was talking to Joe Rogan, so I don't think the response was that intelligent.
No, it
Joe Rogan
wasn't.
pushed him on gravity.
I think the question was, how do you know for certain or something like that we went to the moon? I watched it. I couldn't believe the way he answered. Have you seen the size of the fuel tanks?
What's the,
we
sorry
did
to
some
change.
math. We calculated how much fuel we needed to go. I mean, why else would we calculate how much fuel we need to go unless we win?
What's the
Right?
deal with Joe
That's
Rogan?
actually their
Sorry,
stupidity.
just to change the subject slightly, because you brought it up, chocolate. When Joe Rogan interviewed Neil deGrasse Tyson, it seems very almost uncharacteristic in terms of the style of Joe Rogan. So only recently have I been subject, for whatever reason, to various different interviews and discussions that Joe Rogan has. And he seems like a very down-to-earth, grounded, perceptive guy. Yeah?
Sometimes.
Well, that's what I'm driving at. On the whole, from what I've seen recently, he seems like a grounded, perceptive, level-headed, straight-talking guy. Yet, you look at the deGrasse Tyson interview, and he just doesn't seem that way. He's like almost like a puppy dog fawning. He's like, it's a very different presentation in some respects to how he comes across in general. And I don't get it. I just want to know, what's the deal with Joe Rogan?
Go review some of his old footage with Eddie Bravo, how he's fighting with Eddie Bravo over this.
Right, so he gets real sometimes, other times he goes to shill mode. It's like, then he just sucks up.
MK Ultra mode.
I mean, I don't know, man. Back in the day when he was all about, he was questioning the moon landing, and he was asking really good questions. And at that point, I already knew the moon landing was full of shit. So I was like, okay, this guy's on point. And then all of a sudden, it just happened to be like, I think it was Smoking deGrasse Tyson who went on the show. And all of a sudden, of course we went after that. After that, till this day, I believe, he absolutely believes that we went. When before he was literally saying it's nonsense. But I was just like, what happened here, man? Something happened here.
I'd say Joe Rogan ended up being reminded of the treatment that Gus Grissom got. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
That's kind of what happened there. Now.
You're in a position of authority. You can speak to the people. You better speak what we're saying you should speak, or else.
Because Neil deGrasse Tyson has this way of showing up like a genie or something when people start talking about flat Earth. Like, what was it? Katy Perry who said something about it, right, on a live stream.
That's right. It was.
All of a sudden, he shows up at her house like soon after that. It has this big interview with her.
Yeah, that's right.
What the hell? He's like a genie or something. Like
magician.
Genie in a bottle.
He's not genie. Magician. Shows up in a little puff of smoke.
It's a globe messenger.
See, he knows all the people he could still pull a magic trick on, and he knows who he can't. He can't pull no magic trick over Eddie Bravo, but I still wouldn't want Joe Rogan to give me a kick.
I have to go back and watch it again, but the last interview I saw that with Neil deGrasse and Joe Rogan, like, it almost seemed like the whole gravity thing was getting to Neil deGrasse Tyson because he seemed very agitated. And even Joe Rogan,
he pushed him a little.
Kind of asked him, like, "Are you all right? Like, what's going on? Like,
he pushed him a little bit on the gravity. He did.
Yeah, he did. I think he did a little bit, and he was just like, people are so focused on the why and the why and the why, and you could just keep going down the rabbit hole, but we just know what it is. While we don't know what it is, he was all over the place, and I was like. Even I was like, what's going on with this guy right now? Is he falling apart? Is the pressure getting to him?
Short-circuiting.
Maybe gravity's getting to him.
I don't know.
Yeah,
it was a weird interview.
I would view Joe Rogan and Eddie Bravo as, with Joe Rogan, he has the bigger subscriber base. I think he's the biggest podcast in the world, either him or Mike Tyson. But he's right up there anyway. But the thing about it is that what they needed to do was slow down. They wanted to just slow his roll. That was it. They're not doing the same with Eddie Bravo, because Eddie Bravo already before Flat Earth already had the name of somebody in his own original profession as a professional Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu fighter. But outside of that, then as a podcast, he already had the name as someone who was a bit conspiracy based. So they don't mind Eddie Bravo talking about Flat Earth or talking about Nathan's show because they know they can't stop this. But what they can do is slow it down so they can control the changeover, let's just say. And they can do that.
Right.
They can't stop it.
We need Eddie Bravo, right? Because Eddie Bravo listens to Nathan, so we need Eddie Bravo to go on Joe Rogan and tell him, yo, Nathan will destroy you. Go on that show.
Stop.
ahead, bro.
No. No. I do not want anybody ever telling Joe Rogan that I'd quote unquote destroy him, because have you ever seen Joe Rogan throw a kick?
Yes, I just said that.
I'm not talking about that, man.
Joe might be a thumb, but don't screw with this thumb because he will crush you.
What I'm saying is,
I'm
right,
talking about this.
Joe Rogan is hard as nails, right? There's no mistaking it, right? I wouldn't in any way, shape or form ever want to tangle with the guy, because he would, and I'm not ashamed to admit this, he would beat the living shit out of me, right? Because he's a professional fighter,
submission in seconds.
right? So I don't want to piss the guy off. In terms of debate, yeah, I wouldn't even want to destroy him in debate in terms of the subject. I'd just be more keen to find out his way of thinking. I mean, it's left me intrigued after watching a few interviews where I go, this guy's really insightful. He just seems like he's got a very broad baseline that's like no nonsense, and something that deviates from that baseline he questions, and you go, that's good. It's very bread and butter investigative journalism when I see him interviewing someone, and he seems good. He picks up on things, he'll push where he needs to. And then you see him with Tyson, and you're like you say, there was aspects of him pushing when it came to gravity. But with half an eyebrow raised, you think, well, it wasn't exactly that much digging. On the whole, it was fawning.
Yeah, but then he attacks Eddie Bravo, though, and he really gets on Eddie Bravo because Eddie Bravo will not believe in the moon landings or that the Earth is a sphere. And he gets frustrated, Joe Rogan.
Yeah, but look, himself and Eddie Bravo would have been friends from a good while back, and they trained together and everything. Like, the two of them are professionals in what they did, but prior to being podcast holders, look, it's all just slow it down. Slow it all down so we can keep control of this whole switchover that's happening. Instead of allowing it to happen in 5 years, make it happen over 20 years. That's basically what it is. That's how I view it. I can't prove it. That's how I view it, because Joe Rogan.
I agree.
No fool,
I think if you're saying they need to delay the release of the information, I think I have a tendency to agree with you, just by the way that there's certain things on this platform on YouTube that they shut down with good reason. Certain conspiratorial subjects that people will discuss that are in the mainstream media that are very sensitive. I'm not going to mention any for fear of my channel getting the same treatment, but I'm sure you can all imagine what I'm talking about. And those things will just get shut down. You get a couple of warnings, maybe. Some people don't get any. They're just like, no, you don't talk about that here, and it breaches the terms of service. If you know the terms of service, generally you're okay. Now, in the case of Flat Earth, it's not like that at all. If anything, to me, my perception, when they overtly tell you that something is being censored, that is semi-encouragement for you to look into it if you're inquisitive. So what made me the most suspicious of, or the most akin to agree with what Brian's suggesting here, is when they went before Congress. There was, I don't know her name, but she went before Congress and was specifically asked, what are you going to do about this flat Earth problem? And, well, we're going to tell people Earth's not flat underneath the videos, and they won't get recommended anymore. It's like, why would you overtly say that? It's not like that which shall not be named on YouTube gets mentioned. That doesn't get discussed in Congress. It just gets wiped out of existence without a breath of hesitation, without sometimes any justification to the person who's discussed it, or any reason why discussing it is bad. It just goes. Flat Earth, on the other hand, the other week I was describing how I feel a bit more secure because of people like Simon Dan. In other words, he's got Flat Earth riddled through his tags and titles, so therefore, if the anti-Flat Earth or con-Flat Earth people publish before me, it doesn't necessarily put me into a bad position, because that would look really bad if they literally did, we'll cut and get rid of anybody pro-Flat Earth and only have the negative Flat Earth stuff. That would look terrible. Because that would make more normies' eyebrows raise. You know what I mean? So instead of that, they've kept it under what I would call control release conditions, which is what Brian's describing. They seem to be letting it be out, but making it seem like it shouldn't be, whilst suppressing it, but ultimately letting it still be completely prevalent. It's one of them. A lot of it is surface level. We don't want this, But you're saying it to an audience. So saying to an audience, it's like saying you're going to censor a song, but telling everybody on Radio 1 that you're going to be censoring it. What happens? That song goes straight to #1.
Right, so they might be afraid to martyr Flat Earth, as it were. So they are still poo-pooing it, putting it in a bit of a corner, but still letting people that will go for it anyway do their thing so that they don't become martyrs and start to stand out like, hey, why are these Flat Earthers getting such attacks, like fines, banned, all that they're just wrong, right? They don't want to martyr it, as you say, a controlled situation.
Jaron actually backs up what you're saying, Nathan, because Jaron was saying on Glowbusters, I listened to some of Glowbusters this week, and Jaron Campanella was saying that a new neighbour that moved in across the street from, I think, himself and his partner, that they got to know, he was trying to tell this guy about Flat Earth, and he was telling him about the proofs and different things, and your man was like, yeah, that sounds, I don't know, it does sound pretty strange and interesting, and the guy was kind of 50-50 on the fence. And then, just kind of like at random, Jaron Campanella told him about, I think the woman's name is Wachowski, the CEO of YouTube, about what YouTube did in Congress, and was able to show him and tell him about what happened in 2019, about what they did with Flat Earth, saying that they wanted to suppress it. And your man said to him, well, there has to be something then. He said, you should have led with that. He said, you should have led with that. There has to be something then, he said. You know, and I think the guy is a flat earther now. Because the minute he heard that YouTube were suppressing it, straight away, he was like, there's something wrong. If they're suppressing it, it means there's something they're trying to hide. Right. So that backs up.
If it's actually being suppressed, again, it'd be useful if I could just detail a specific event, but I don't want to, and I'm sure you'll appreciate why. But if a certain event gets discussed and gets immediately taken down, and then somebody who sees that happen makes a video about that person's video being taken down, and that gets taken down, people very quickly get conditioned. It's Pavlovian. Oh, right, I talk about that, I lose my channel. Best not talk about it then. Best not hint at it then. Best not suggest it or tag it then. And people don't. So what happens with that information? Gone. Not being discussed in Congress, because that would bring attention to it. So, like, I don't know, it's showing one thing with your hand and saying another completely different thing. Or exposing something that you say doesn't want exposure, and telling the person, we don't want this being exposed, while we shine a big light on it.
Slow release. It's a slow release.
Isn't that like a kind of a double gaslighting situation?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Well, the thing about it is that with Flat Earth, they have that option to slow release it, slow it down, because it's information. So basically, it's a slow release of correct information over incorrect information over a course of span of time. But with other things that we won't speak about, they're more directly in everyone's face, and so it's more of a they have to stamp down on that, because they can't. That's the only way to control it. So they have to control everything, but they can't control everything in the same way.
Yeah, but look how many people get affected by it. If tomorrow the world wakes up to flat Earth, there'll be so many people out of work.
Well, that guy Philip Schofield, that ITV presenter in the UK, what he said about it was really strange. It's like he heard so much about it that when it was brought up on the show with Mark Sargent, he said, "Look, if it's flat, it's flat. What's the big deal?" You know, so people will forget about the seriousness of it and just kind of go, "Look, if it is, it is." You know what I mean? It's kind of a little bit like that. They forget the serious side of, hey, you've been absolutely lied to. It's more like we were wrong.
Yeah, exactly. When it gets past the stage, because we're right in the middle of the discussion, denial. Sorry, not discussion. The bargaining stage in the 5 stages of loss, right? So the anger and the denial come before this stage, but the stage after it is depression. Well, the problem is that if everybody, as you describe it, woke up to this fact tomorrow, and Neil says, well, people will be out of work, well, I can't predict what the actual effect would be. But what I would say is that if everybody was to contemplate it all at once, there could be a massive rebellion. Everybody bracing against the control structure that they're under because they perceive that they've been lied to. Now, what they need for it to be disseminated on the news as just accepted as normal is the reaction that Philip Schofield gave. Well, if that's the case, then so be it. As opposed to, I've been lied to, let's march on Washington. Because that isn't what's going to help them keep control of people. And this is all it's all about. It's about retaining control. Well, if it's perceived that a perception of a lie, a malicious lie, is going to be foisted on potential people's controllers and keepers, then that's not going to give them an easier way of keeping them under control. So we need to do something about it. We need to keep this under wraps. However, a lie is a lie is a lie, and they're not going to be able to maintain the position that Earth is a sphere forever when it's obviously and observably flat and measured flat, and everything that's being done on it's done as it being flat. You know, that's going to get out eventually. So you've got to let it out to some extent in some fashion, but in a way that doesn't make everybody around you react badly. You want everyone to react like Philip Schofield. Well, you know, if that's the way it is. In other words, sort of righteous indignation to the fact that it is, and, well, I just accept it as that way anyway. And that is normally the case. It's new ideas, not that this is an idea, it's just a fact of life, are often ridiculed and berated and charged down, challenged, fought against, and then accepted as like everybody always accepted that anyway. What are you talking about? That's just how it goes. Well, we're in the stage of people rebelling against it, and they need to keep that tucked away in a corner, and that's what we are.
Yeah, they've created a situation where their main pushback is only the fundamentalists that we deal with, and they have us to deal with them. So they don't have to deal with it at all.
No, I'm sorry. We're still looked at as idiots, Brian. We're still looked at as morons that believe the Earth is flat.
Yeah, but that doesn't matter. The point is, the powers that be, right, have created such a controlled situation that the only pushback is coming from the fundamentalists. And the powers that be have us there to deal with these fundamentalists. And that's what we're doing. That's
exactly.
Whether we
exactly.
like it or not.
Yeah, that's where we're a cog in the psyop. If somebody was to postulate that we're a psyop, us personally, like you're part of the problem, well, yeah, in some small way we are, because that's exactly the function we serve, right? There's a fundamentalist pushback that if it was on the news tomorrow, the people who come and oppose us, very much in the dark shadows of YouTube, would suddenly go, well, who do we blame? Who do we attack? It wouldn't be us that's saying Earth's not a sphere that they're attacking anymore. It's the guy on the news and the general authority that suddenly told them something in opposition to what they currently believe. Well, they don't want the attack to come their way. They want it to come our way. And even if it's just initially or until that fades, until people just accept it. I mean, maybe that's what we're experiencing now with the very quiet, you know, nobody's actually challenging us. Our arguments are standing as they are without challenge because they're unchallengeable. So it's just a case of repeating them until people just accept them and go, oh, that's just the way it is. And then their indifference won't lead to a bloody rebellion and the governments of the world losing any control that they had. Well, when it reaches that stage, yeah, then it'll just be declared by everyone around you as just being accepted as obvious anyway. Why would you have a show about it? Yeah, we all know.
It'll be a bloody rebellion because, look, right away they'll be attacking NASA and all these other space agencies that have been spending all of this money on nothing.
What makes you think NASA's prevalent in the minds of anybody in the general public? Occasionally, they'll put a new snippet out, like recently with this Mars nonsense, right? Generally speaking, about 96, 97, The Simpsons did a little piece in one of their shows where Bart and Homer are watching the TV, fighting over the remote, and the batteries come out as it switches channel to a rocket launch. And both the father and son are going, God, get it off, it's so boring, oh no! And the TV says, and on today's mission we have a mathematician, a statistician, and another mathematician. And they're like, oh God, get it off, it's so boring! In other words, trying to push down the relevance, make it seem normal but boring, nothing to see here, nobody's paying attention to NASA. That's the general status that they put out for NASA. It's for kids. They do little kids' magic tricks. and
No,
have
I'm
kids.
talking about the money situation. If people wake up tomorrow that the Earth is flat, they'll be like, then why are we spending all this money on space agencies?
Is it just me? Does anybody find that a lot of people like a lot of maybe your friends or people you know like are very hesitant about this latest NASA bullshit? Like I got a lot of my just friends, regular Glober friends, who are just making fun of this shit. Like I walked into a chat, I'm like, wait a minute, I thought you guys all believed this, but they're all making fun of it. Like this is absolute nonsense.
That's good.
Does anybody?
That's what you need.
Anybody else experience? Or?
That's good. You need. That's what you need. If there's ever going to be a transition to reality from away from heliocentrism, I don't think there will. I think there'll be a new philosophy introduced just to retain a different aspect of control, like Winston being tortured. You know, we can make the stars close if we need to. Well, likewise, they can make the Earth flat if they need to within a certain whatever system they employ. But that being said, for the system to change, you've got to have that attitude in the general populace, which is the NASA stuff's silly, isn't it? They're still pretending Earth's spherical and not care.
Well, I would say different. I would say that it's going to be a full situation where it will be admitted that we are flat, stationary, and enclosed. But it'll happen in stages. The flat part will start to come first. But the thing about it is that what Neil said about NASA, right, spending all the money. All NASA will do is turn around and show what they have been spending the money on, and all the world will go, "Wow, this is what's been going on," and they'll forget about all the other nonsense.
Yeah.
That's what they'll do.
Hold on, whoever that is, hold on. Exactly, Brian. That's where I was going with Joe Rogan, right? That's where I was leading. Got there in the end. So he's described as having an idea that he justified with a different interviewer, that what they're telling you about the moon landing in all its heliocentric glory is just not the real story. There's a second covert mission to the dark side, or whatever he came up with. In other words, he postulated that, yeah, they probably are lying, but they need to lie because of all the secret alien bases, or whatever. So they just create a new narrative that dissolves the idea of it being a lie, or it being true, sorry, that they went in the way they told you, but still keeps a certain aspect of the narrative alive for people to not want to rebel against all the money that's been spent on it for a total lie, right? And Joe Rogan typifies that. He just came up with a justifiable story to someone else that, well, I'm sure they did actually go, but obviously they're not going to tell us about their real intentions because that would put people in danger, or whatever you justify it with. But not, well, what did they spend all that money on? What, just to lie to us? Then you get the outrage that we get here. Well, until we move past that. In other words, until I don't have a show, until there's no point in me being here, Earth's still a sphere in the minds of the general populace. That's the way it is. I mean, I'm smiling because that's the reason I picked this show format, because I think it's going to be a fairly long period before that transition can take place, because more people who are on the side of just saying and aren't just aren't exposed to it in the same way we get people come here who have been, well, they may have the same reaction, but they're not going to be putting that or aiming that disdain towards me, the flat earther. They'll be putting it towards the person that's told them the reverse of what they thought was true. Now, if that's the news or the government or whoever, that is where their anger will be directed. So they need that anger from whoever's going to get that anger to direct it somewhere else, us, much easier, until that anger fades.
Well, they're already doing that. Remember the movie Interstellar, where Matthew McConaughey's at the school and the lady says the moon landings were fake. And he says, "You don't think?" Hang on, Neil. He says, "Oh, you don't think we went to the moon?" And then the answer was, "Well, that was the thing about the race with the Russians." So basically alluding that it was faked. But what is the premise of the movie of Interstellar? So they'll say this was a lie that everyone believed, but it was fake. But now we're going to have to leave Earth because Earth is dying and space is real. So they really used that movie and threw the Earth's mission to the moon under the bus, only to come back and say outer space is real. So they're doing it now. They're flipping it around and making it work for their gain by admitting never went to the moon, at least in that movie.
Well, you can see there.
But that movie is pretty unique, though. It's pretty unique.
It's a great movie.
It's not copied.
What are you
Well,
guys talking about? I'm not talking about entertainment value. I'm talking about the scene and what they did.
That's what I'm talking about. Why are you
Yeah,
thinking
I know.
I'm talking about anything else? That's exactly what I'm talking about. But what you're basically describing is what they did so eloquently is to say moon landings can happen, but the one you thought that happened was fake because it had to be faked. But it's still possible.
But yes,
It's
you're
all
right.
about
You're right,
That's what I
Ken.
just said.
Can I have a question, guys, real quick? Can I ask a question real quick? I claim the globe's heliocentric as a religion. The more I look into quantum physics and scientism, I can't be the only one. I see the cabal in it.
Okay.
There is a lot of
Who's Helios?
numerology.
Sorry.
Sorry, go on, Chocolate.
Go.
I was just gonna say. I mean, you're starting with it. It's a religion. Who's Helios? First
The
off,
sun god.
Right. Oh, yeah, I know that. They name all
that's
the
just
stuff
for
Apollo.
starters.
Who's Apollo?
You know what I'm
If you
saying?
want to learn about the globe, please visit your local Helio Center.
Right.
Jeez.
Yeah, but it's a lot of cabal teaching, man. It's really strange. It all correlates.
Yeah, because it's controlled. It's all derived from control structures.
The origin of the globe that we're told, if you go by what history on the internet tells you, it comes from a guy called Pythagoras. And Pythagoras was also acclaimed numerology master. So you're going to have loads of numerology based within the globe model and all heliocentrism. It's a wash with it.
Sir Isaac Newton, he was born in over there in the UK. He was big into the cabal.
Yeah,
Not just him, Albert Einstein.
Kepler, Brahe, all these people were astrologers. So Galileo was an astrologer. These are all the claims about these people. I mean,
They even tell you themselves in the wiki. My bad, Brian, real quick. I was going to say, I remember reading in the wiki themselves telling you Pythagoras, when he came up with the globe, it was based on aesthetic evidence as opposed to physical evidence. Right? He just thought it was a great idea. As opposed to basing it on physical, actual empirical evidence.
Yeah,
As opposed to just being flat.
Well, it works both ways, Chocolate. So sometimes you can raise an objection, like Newton or Brahe, and then have your objection reverse engineered into the rhetoric.
Yep.
So an objection to gravity becomes ascribed to you as your namesake, Newtonian gravity. Or Brahe, well, they'd have to be massive, right? The lights would have to be enormous. Well, that becomes the story. That's the reason. So Brahe says, no, they would have to be enormous at these distances, so therefore they're enormous, right?
Make it so.
Make it so. But we'll ascribe it to Brahe.
Yep. That's what we need.
I'd just like to say about the... Sorry, Chocolate, I thought you were finished. Sorry.
I'm done. Good.
Sorry, bud. Just about the whole NASA issue, I know that there was a bit of conjecture about NASA might come up with a different story and show you what they've really been doing, and it's maybe a different story or some nonsense. But they could just as easily just turn around and say, we've been spending the money exploring the world we're really in, and then tell everyone where they really are. And everyone will just be happy with that. They won't care about all the money that NASA got.
I won't.
NASA will explain, but the general population will. The general population will go, yeah, most people, Neil, will just accept it. I'm not saying you will, but most people will.
What's much easier? Far easier to just close them down, slowly close them down, disband them all, and then 10 years down the line, when there's no NASA to go and point fingers at, then declare it.
Yeah,
they got too much to lose right now.
I mean,
they've got to maintain the rhetoric.
The astronauts are literally using a machine that they'll call a toilet, and then going to that machine, and that toilet's making them coffee in the morning, and you'll actually fight that. Like you won't fight against that. You'll actually say, yeah, that makes sense. That's a little crazy.
Sounds like a shitty cup of coffee.
Yeah, that's what it is. I ran around my job and show people Don Pettit describing how they go to the toilet, and this toilet makes them coffee in the morning. And most people, like normal people, would be like, "That's ridiculous. I don't even want to believe that that's real." And I'm saying, look, this is a guy from NASA. This is your guy. I didn't come up with this guy. This is him telling you how this works, how they make coffee in the morning. And most people said, "Nah, I don't believe that." I did run across one guy who was just like, "Yeah, that makes sense." I mean, I was just like, "Oh my god,
Wow, that's a mess,
bro!" People are willing to believe anything, man. Just wrap a good story
really.
around it.
Again, I'm rolling
Like
my eyes because
proportion.
I'm sitting here thinking the whole time. So, what's getting discussed is whether or not a recycling toilet can make coffee, rather than whether or not they're falling around a presupposed sphere Earth in a sky vacuum without the gas we're breathing filling it.
Oh yeah, they're not even at that level.
No, I get
use
it. I
that
get
as a
it. You're
gag
gonna,
to show people that you will believe anything. And some people were trying to debunk the guy that works in NASA. They told me he doesn't work for NASA. I said, just Google him. Don Pettit works for NASA.
we don't have drift. What do you mean we've got a physical Earth curve edge blocking things? Who says that? Prove to me that we say that.
I was like, this is your
Exactly,
guy. How are you
Nathan's point.
debunking me? This is your guy.
We never
The same
claimed
thing
NASA
with
existed.
same thing with Michelle Thaler. People told me, nah, she doesn't work for NASA. I had to have
That's
people
funny.
Google it themselves. Doctor.
I wonder
Michelle
how
Thaler. Go ahead.
I hear the question. I wonder how the boosters work with that little rover, but they didn't work at the moon missions. Stuff just don't. It's horrible. The CGI they're not even trying anymore at all.
Yeah,
But
like I
that's
say,
what
they've
I'm
got to keep
saying.
the.
But they don't have to.
They've
With
got to
this
keep it out
latest
there.
NASA shit, like people are shitting all over it. It's
Yeah.
it's
But that's what it's got to do. You've got to slowly ramp it down. If you just stopped, that would look very suspicious. So it's got to be slowly petered out, descended into, stupidity, geared more like Santa every time it's presented, geared more like it's just for kids to understand a philosophy, then disbanded, then shut down, then everyone forgotten about. And then, 10 years after that, when everyone's already forgotten about it, you'll have your Discovery Channel documentary about the fakeness of NASA. And everyone, oh yeah, I remember when they used to say that before we all found out it was flat.
Well,
That would be great.
at this present time, really, I kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier, that we are not only the front of their defense, but we are basically disbanding all this for them, because we're like a group of people who go into a big factory, and that factory is going to close, and we're going to move all the people that work in that factory to different factories under the same company, but they'll be doing different jobs. And we're disbanding all that for them. So they don't have to deal. The fundamentalists, we're getting them out of the way. All the normies would be easy, because it's easy to sway the masses, because they don't really care.
That's correct. We're demolition experts. We've been sent in to deal with the dirty business of dismantling this globe. Tradition, rhetoric, religion, however you want to describe it. It's an old, dilapidated building that needs to be taken to pieces, and we've got to do that dirty business of taking it to pieces. While everyone around goes, we really like that building, we want it to stay! We go, yeah, whatever. It's coming down. Deal with it.
I tell you what, didn't those satellites in so-called space cost millions of dollars, right? They must suck really bad because they still got to use these E3 Sentries and Hawkeyes for the ocean.
Yeah, that'll transition into the balloons that we really have. They've already started doing it. I mean, the fact that they are content to tell the public that they've got these balloons out there, 20 years ago, you'd never have heard that. They would have never have disclosed it. You'd never see footage of it. But now,
no,
it's easy to find. So they're already saying, and a lot of the technology that's expensive, that's claimed to be going up into the sky vacuum on a rocket, is simultaneously going up on a balloon, and you can see it. And they are doing, presumably, they are actually researching something. So they've got to be spending their money. They do spend their money. You see what it gets spent on. You see the shiny things going up into the sky. So they are spending the money. And I think they'll hang on that when it comes to having to divulge certain bits of research, which they do. I mean, I used to be a NASA fanboy. There's a lot of Earth information that they do divulge, and it is tedious and boring. You know, and the space is the exciting bit when they show you the CGI images and cartoons and depictions of what's happening that they obviously couldn't be filming. It's happening out in the sky vacuum. But here's a cartoon of what's happening. Isn't it exciting? And then the next thing that they'll talk about on Science at NASA is something relatively mundane about how Earth actually behaves. And it's normally pretty accurate. You know, there's a reason we go to the citations about things like gas pressure from NASA. Because they're just divulging fairly basic stuff. And it's normally pretty good. You know, there we go. That's my 2 penny.
You know what I find?
I don't know,
they're
Nathan.
good at
Nathan,
what
here's
they
a
put
question
out
though.
and don't
How
put
is
out.
it doesn't
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
go ahead. It doesn't make sense actually. So on their system, right? The Earth in the summertime for like North America or the northern hemisphere, it's 3 million miles away from the sun. And then when it's the summertime in like Antarctica, it's much closer to the sun. So why isn't Antarctica hotter? It just or the southern, it just don't make no sense. And then
But
couldn't
what they did there is that came back to Kepler. For Kepler to make Copernicus's model work of a heliocentric system, he had no choice but to, because of the observations of what we see the sun do as a cycle year in, year out, he had to put the Earth further and closer at 2 different times of the year, and also have a 23.4 degree tilt. He had no choice but to do that to make it all work, right? But how they explain it is they just say parallel rays. If you look at the claim, it's like, no, it's still different because the rays are parallel. That's what they're trying to say. It's still the same amount. They try and say that that's a couple of million miles, whatever, that in difference in distance, that doesn't matter at all. Yes, if you look online at what would happen if we were 1 foot closer to the sun, they'd say that we'd be destroyed. Sorry, Chocolate.
I was just gonna say, parallel rays. I remember Rumpus debunking that. I don't know.
I don't know.
Go on, whoever it is in Discord. Go on. Obviously not.
That kind of stuff to happen, because that's exactly what they want to have happen. They want us to do their work for them.
Right, but isn't it weird that shouldn't it be pretty hot the summertime in Antarctica, because how close they are to the sun? Though it just don't make no sense. It's a lot closer. That's a drastic. It's a drastic change. I mean, 3 million miles is only like 9 point whatever, blah blah this stuff, farther distance. Okay, whatever, but that's still a big distance from the summertime for us, like northern hemisphere. And then for the southern hemisphere, man, it should be freaking hot like a mug. They're really close.
Like getting away, walking away from an open oven and getting hotter.
You're describing the description they have that the sun increases its output volume as you back away from it.
It's getting hotter as I
It's
back
their
away.
arguments.
Yeah, but I'm relating that
though.
to their positioning of the Earth. Like we're supposedly the closest in January when there's 7 feet of snow outside, but in July that's when we're furthest. That makes no sense.
Well,
and that they claim that it's about the angle that the sunlight's coming in at is what determines how hot the sun will be.
Sure it is.
Parallel rays.
Yeah.
Sure it is.
Yeah, that relies on parallel rays, exactly.
As I said, it's just double speak, because if you Google what would happen if Earth was 1 foot closer or 1 mile closer to the sun than it is, they would say it would be catastrophic in the heliocentric model. Yet they'll tell you you'll be 3 million miles away from it.
And that's okay.
And 3 million miles closer. Do you know what I mean? So it's just double speak.
I think we're diverging from the point here.
Boom boom. But man, the sun has a dimmer on it. Like sometimes it's parallel, and then sometimes, for the eclipses, when they show you the cute little diagram with the triangles and all this, with the umbra and penumbra. Oh yeah, now it's got a dimmer.
Well,
just depends
I mean,
on what, like Rumpus said, it's multiple choice. You know, it depends on what argument you're having that day.
Don't call it Rumpus now. Rumpus, dude, he couldn't admit Skylark or whatever video I posted, right? So she put down this placemat, right? She had a little drawing and she opened up her sliding glass door. So that we was on Brandon's channel, I think his name is. So the bottom obscured due to the heat waves coming in, and it took him almost 30 minutes to actually admit that it's refraction and heat waves. It is this. He called it looming at first. He said looming. It's
good old looming, baby.
Yeah.
My glass slider looms all the time. I don't see the problem.
Their looming
involves video. Yes, sorry, Nick.
Their looming involves terrestrial refraction. That they need R for that, and we've debunked R.
Was that the Black Swan with the garage door? Was it a garage door or something? They were opening it, and then the light disappeared.
Skylar, it's a lady. She did the test. You can see it. It's on.
So they don't like that, right? But they don't like that because they could clearly see the light disappearing. So
no, it was
an optical effect, right?
It was yeah, it was a drawing, dude. She did it. It was amazing. I just posted. It was amazing how she did it and how it started to disappear from the bottom up. You know,
I think is the name of that man.
And dude.
Oh, I didn't see this one then.
Sky Free.
You have to watch it, dude. Yeah, her. She does some nice stuff.
Yeah, because what they do is they just miniaturize everything, don't they? They just put little radio controlled boats onto.
Are they the ones with the boats?
Yeah, they do that
with
as
the
well.
little boats. Oh, okay, yeah, I know who you're talking about.
They're doing the same thing they're just changing the temperature, doing the same thing as people on the pond did. They just change the temperature in the room, and suddenly there's a hot and cold. There's convection going on. So consequently, when convection happens, which happens because of the sun, we get all these different effects. The best real life, if you want a really good real life version or video of these effects, was from Joshua Nowicki, the time lapse of going from day to night of Chicago across Lake Michigan. It's on his channel. It shows exactly what Sky Free shows, just in the big version.
Right, or Skunk Bay is the other one. With that, I'm going to say a huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ panels for making today's after show possible. Of course, a massive thank you to all of you in either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams for hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, and all that good stuff. Also, below this video, there is a link to get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!